Welcome to Advanced Analytics in Healthcare, SQL, and BigQuery. This is going to be a short and sweet one. I just want to answer this question. What is SQL and why should I care as a healthcare analyst? We're going to be talking specifically about BigQuery because I've got a data set up for you in BigQuery so you get some practice. I've chosen BigQuery because it's a cloud platform and that is the way that healthcare is moving. The data being available on the cloud in some format, either BigQuery, AWS, or another provider. So BigQuery is the one I'm most familiar with, so that's what you're going to get. A lot of the common things will apply across all of these, but we're going to speak about BigQuery, which is a powerful tool for analyzing really large healthcare data sets. It allows users to run quick queries on giant pieces of data, often without needing extensive coding skills, and that's becoming something that doesn't matter anymore anyway with LLMs. Integrates easily with other Google Cloud services for better insights. Google has a number of services in the analytics space. If you're lucky enough to be at an institution that has enabled all of them, you have a really interesting set of tools, but often that can be one of the limiting things. Large institutions have to sort of decide what is safe and allowed within their institution. So you might not have everything you want, but BigQuery has a lot to offer. It enables healthcare analysts to focus on data trends rather than all of the technicalities of keeping large sets of data performative when you query them. Let's talk about understanding BigQuery a little more. BigQuery is a fully managed, what they call a serverless data warehouse, which means you as an institution don't have to keep a server, but don't get it wrong, it's sitting somewhere else on a server. Someone else is managing it for you. It enables really fast SQL queries using the processing power of Google's infrastructure that can scale without you having to continue to manage the hardware. Stores and analyzes a ton, including some new opportunities for real-time data, integrates really well with everything else in Google. And I mentioned scalability is the biggest thing here. It will grow with you. So this is the real question. Why? Why SQL and BigQuery? If you are not as technical, you may really be struggling with what this is and how it is supposed to be used, why it would be used, why you would pick this up versus all the other things that you hear about. So the journey starts with a front-end application. What do I mean by that? I'm talking about the electronic health record, the claims processing tool, the lab processing, the wearable device. Something in the front end is collecting and creating data, and you as an analyst are meant to use it to help decision makers in the practice. So that data gets sent somewhere. It gets sent to a relational database. Now, often there is a production database that supports the application itself, so it runs. Epic has a specific database that is really finely tuned to operate very quickly in being able to serve up that front-end application that a provider is working with. So often, actually, the thing you're interacting with is an analytics replicate that's been sent off from the main production database. But regardless, one of these ways, you've got a relational database that is coming from the front-end application where it's storing the data. It's storing all the actions that have happened and what's going on. Then, often institutions, the IT folks in your institution are piping that data off somewhere to something like a departmental data mart. So you might think of like your pharmacy group has a data set and the research colleagues, maybe your Department of Medicine does, something like that. So this is where individuals take that data from the relational database, manipulate it, and store it how they need it for their individual needs. Now, you see I've got three terms underneath there: mart, lake, warehouse. You could also put database down there. These terms are being used very loosely, and there are some definitions. Feel free to go look them up. They're not that important to you as the end user. There's a big set of data sitting somewhere, and the folks who have positioned it may have a specific reason for how it's organized and why they're calling it a mart versus a lake versus a warehouse versus just a database. It's just the place where the tables are that you are trying to find. Now, that might go to a ton of different places, ton of different applications, or this might all be gathered into one giant enterprise collection as well. Maybe there's some general data marts for the whole enterprise that you can access through a reporting application. So you might be getting that directly from the relational database created by the front end, or you might be getting it through a departmental database or an enterprise general data set that's been created. Reporting applications, what am I talking about? This is Tableau, Power BI, SAS, one of these other places where you can start doing analytics as an analyst. So you as the analyst usually are accessing data through that reporting application so you can make something with it, so you can do some analysis, so you can actually use the information. So there are some barriers. There are going to be rate limiting mechanisms in place to make sure that people are not accessing data that they shouldn't. And so this is often one of the barriers that comes up as an analyst is you may have access to the data through the reporting application. And once you have a question about where did the data come from, what's the data mart look like, how was it created, you're going to go through one of these little turny deals that shuts you off from access. And so you're going to have to negotiate, how do I get access to understand that data, how it was created, and who created it. So if you are a curious person and trying to understand where the data comes from and how it is created, you are very likely to hit one of these barriers upstream in getting access to the data. So this is the primary way that we are using data in healthcare as an analyst. But there are some alternative ways that this goes. You may have seen what I just showed you and said, well, I don't really interact with any reporting applications. I don't use Tableau or Power BI. That means you are likely doing one of the following two things. One of these alternative approaches may describe you. One thing is you may be exporting data directly from the front-end application. So in the example of Epic, they have a tool called Reporting Workbench. They have a tool called Slicer Dicer. They have some different things there that you can export data from. So you might be exporting that to Excel so that you can build something with it, so that you can just use it in Excel, whatever the case may be. What's really happening there is the front-end application is storing that data off in a database, and it's coming back through the front-end application to you instead of going through this other kind of pipe work. It's inefficient, unstable, prone to inconsistencies, and highly manual. So this starts to give us the hint as to why we should care about SQL. Why would we want to learn SQL or at least understand its utility? Because the alternative is trying to get it just from the front-end application. And if you've ever had to do that in any great volume, you know it's inefficient. It's very unstable and highly manual, plus prone to inconsistencies. And there's a long laundry list that can keep going beyond that, but I won't beat a dead horse. The other alternative approach you might be operating in is that the front-end application has some analytics capabilities. So you're not just exporting it, but you might be using Slicer Dicer in Epic, or you might be using some other tool that has reporting that you can go ahead and define your report, have it created, and maybe have a place to go and view that report. Now that's a legitimate way to be operating as an analyst, but there are usually some major limitations to using data in that way because the applications in healthcare are not analytics first. They are not built with analytics as a core competency. It is, to my experience, always without exception, limited, inflexible, and does not give you very much control. So, finally the answer. Why SQL and BigQuery? Because SQL or a similar language like SQL BigQuery, I think is what they're calling it right now. They've had some different names throughout the years. It's just a slightly different flavor of SQL that you use when you're querying from BigQuery, but almost 99% the same. It is the language that we use to get data from a database, a data mart, a data lake, or a data warehouse. So the reason why is to push that sphere of control, sphere of access back so that you can understand where the data comes from and how it got there, and you have more control over how it gets to you so that you can use it in your Tableau, Power BI, whatever the case may be. If you are sitting on the right-hand side here using Tableau and you've never hit a barrier or an issue in accessing data, then don't worry about it. But if you're a curious person and you want to understand better, why do you have crap data? Why are you always waiting on data to be loaded in a timely manner? If you need to understand that world, you need to kind of peek through the the wall that's in place, or you need to understand the logic of how the data was created and positioned for you, then you're going to want access further up the pipeline. Typically in healthcare, this pipeline is quite sliced up between IT roles that do most of the database work and positioning data, and analyst roles who just use the data. And if you've worked in that environment, you know it can be quite difficult to negotiate back and forth with the roles that are further upstream. So, more to the why SQL and BigQuery, we can summarize it with these 3 points. Direct data access. It allows you to get in there and get your hands dirty with real data in the data marts wherever it is stored. Gives you more flexibility and control about what you can access. Efficiency and stability is the other major reason. If you're working in one of those alternative cases I mentioned where you're downloading data, it is so mind-numbingly difficult to do that regularly. You're going to eventually say, why can't I hook up to this automatically? And the answer is SQL. Learn SQL. And finally, advanced analytics. If you want to do anything interesting or advanced with data, you're going to need that control and access so that you can get at data in a routine way that you can count on. So that's it. That is the why SQL and BigQuery. Thanks for sticking with me. The next couple of modules will be access to the data set I've created for you in BigQuery and talking through the basics of how we use it to get information about healthcare in general. So stay tuned. Thanks for joining.